Good morning. Today I'm looking at a verse in one of the minor prophets. It's towards the end of the Old Testament in the book of Micah. Um, if you don't know where to find Micah, if you reach Isaiah or Jeremiah, go a little bit further. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah. Micah was one of the minor prophets. He prophesied during the reigns of King Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, who were the kings in Judah. He lived in Judah, and he was a contemporary of Isaiah and Hosea and Amos. And he preached pretty much the same thing that the others of his contemporary prophets were preaching, and that was that the people had got very comfortable. They had got they weren't at war with anyone particularly. At that stage, they were quite wealthy, and those who were wealthy couldn't wait till the end of a religious or holy day so that they could get back to cheating other people with false weights and with dishonest dealings in the marketplace. And the thrust of all these prophets was that professing a Christian faith, or professing a faith in God, of course they couldn't be Christian because they were pre the coming of Jesus. Do forgive me for that. No, that a faith in God expressed through observing sacrificial requirements and so on was not sufficient. What was necessary was that their life lived up to their expression of faith in practical terms. So they would go and they would offer sacrifices, they would do all the right things, they would do all the right things religiously. But then as soon as they couldn't wait for it to be over so that they could go back to their wheeling and dealing, to line their pockets at the expense of the poor mostly. Amos describes it as selling the poor for a price of a pair of shoes. There were dreadful things going on. The leaders were in a pickle. The way that they led, they didn't preach properly. It's very sad. I mean, Micah himself says in chapter 1, chapter 2, "Woe to those who devise wickedness and work evil upon their beds. When the morning dawns, they perform it because it is in the power of their hand. They covet fields and seize them, and houses and take them away. They oppress a man and his house, a man and his inheritance." And so he's telling them what to do, and the response comes back in Micah 6, verse 6. "With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams and 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression and the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul?" It was a practice of the countries around Judah to offer human sacrifice to their gods in times of need, or to plead for good harvests and so on. It was quite a common practice, and indeed it was done by many of the Jews because they adopted some of the practices of the lands around them. And so the question is asked of God, well, what do you require? If you don't like what our life, what do you require? Micah is asking the question on behalf of the people who might turn to God and say, well, if you're not satisfied with, are you not satisfied with these offerings that we are giving to you? And the answer comes in verse 8. "He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." Now, this is not saying that forgiveness is not necessary, because they were offering sacrifices in accordance to the Jewish rules. They were making offerings for sin They were covering their sin. The problem was that their life just went on the same as it always had done, and they needed to repent, just like the people of Jesus's day needed to repent when John the Baptist came to them and said, get ready for the coming of the Messiah. Change the way you're living, because you're not living the way God has shown you should live. You slipped from the path. So and James teaches exactly the same thing in the Christian context, that when we have faith in Jesus, the way we live, the way we speak, the way we conduct ourselves, how we treat each other, these should all be evidence of our faith in God. Not that we earn our position with God by what we do, but that what we do shows where we are in God and reflects the standards that Jesus has taught. We are lifelong disciples, you and I, of Jesus, not fair weather friends. We're not those, I hope, we're not those who go to church on Sundays and perhaps to a meeting in the middle of the week, a Bible study or a prayer meeting, and the rest of the time we do whatever we please. No. We are disciples. And this verse is a lovely verse, because it shows how simple it is to follow God. It's not complicated. It's not difficult. Jesus set a principle for us, which is Old Testament principle as well, which Micah was living to, which is the two priorities of our life: loving God with all our heart, soul, mind and strength, and loving our neighbour as ourselves. But Micah puts it this way: do justice, to love kindness or mercy or steadfast love, to love kindness, to express steadfast love, that is loving God and your neighbour, and to walk humbly with your God. You can't walk with God unless you are yoked. Jesus talked about being yoked together, didn't he? Take my yoke upon you. We're meant to walk humbly with our God, alongside our God, referring everything to him, giving him preference in all things. We are not the leader. We walk with God. We don't walk ahead of him. We don't have to walk behind him. We walk yoked with him. We walk humbly with our God, to do justice, to do the right thing. To know what the right thing is, we need to keep reading this book. And when we know what the right thing is, we should do it. When you're a Christian, I tell you a secret. When you're a Christian, you don't get a holiday. You don't get days off. You don't get days when you don't have to follow Jesus, when you can forget about anything demanding, when you can just laze around and do your own thing. All the time we are following him, and following him brings refreshment. Following him brings joy and peace and blessing and steadfast love, with the presence of Jesus with us every moment of every day. Why would we want to go on holiday? It's a bit like me. My last thought before I finished this morning, when I came down to the West Country from South London, where I used to live, I came down here, and where we live here is it's half an hour's drive from the coast, from the seaside, and it's in a rural setting. So in the countryside is all around us, with the fields and the animals and everything. And I said to Terry, why does anyone in the West Country go on holiday? Because this is where people like me who live in towns and cities, we come to places like this for holidays. So why would anyone who lives here need to go on holiday? And that's true of us as Christians. We don't need a holiday, because walking with the Lord is refreshment and joy and invigorating and life-giving, because Jesus came to give us life, and life in all its abundance. Abundant life. He has shown you O man, O woman, what is good? And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, and to love mercy or kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Bye-bye.